Well, my original plan for this HZ One Tonner cab was to leave it as unmolested as possible and really do a quick, neat restore to the tiny little bits of rust that it has in it, clean up the paint, but leave as much of the original paint that's still in good condition where it is. But the closer I look at it and the more I watch other people's videos restoring these cabs, the more I'm starting to think it's probably wiser to pull the cowl off, take the glass out and get it to a sandblaster and really start from scratch. But before I make any final decisions on that, I thought this video would be useful to do just as an assessment, a close-up look at the parts that I'm kind of worried about. And maybe while I'm still thinking about which way to go, a bunch of you will have some suggestions or experiences to share that might help me with that final decision. So yeah, I haven't had a lot of time to spend working on Trixie the last couple of weekends because we've been putting a lot of effort into building a retaining wall for a shade shed going out the side of this shed, which will ultimately become a painting bay, I hope. I also don't have a lot of time to spend on Trixie today, so this will be a pretty short session for me with the car and a pretty short video for you, where really my goal is just to go over all the bits, mostly on the inside, that I'm concerned about. Even though there's a tiny bit of rust throughout this car, there is some rust throughout this car. And I want to find that balance between restoring and preserving what's there, but not at the risk of ignoring something that could end up flaring up in the future and creating some horrible rework, like putting all that effort into learning how to paint it and maybe doing a good enough job and then discovering bubbles of rust coming through from somewhere that I just didn't treat at the very beginning. So that's my fear. Anyway, I'm going to walk you through as I do an assessment of all the parts that I'm concerned about. Hopefully I'll get clear about the questions that I have, and the good thing about knowing the questions you have is it gets you a step closer to finding the answers. Maybe some of you will have the answers for me, or at least some ideas for me to consider about finding that balance between restoring and preserving versus doing things right while I've got the opportunity. So let's get into it. Let's start with the roof inside, because when I pulled this headliner out, I was just amazed at how great the inside looked. Like, that's all the original paint and it's just beautiful. I mean, that what you think might be rust colored stuff there is really just the primer. So I thought this would be awesome, and all I'd have to do is just spray up into all the little cavities with some fish oil. But when we take a look up in those little cavities, I'm not sure if I'm getting that lit right. Hang on. Anyway, I've put a borescope up there, so if that didn't work out, I'll show some of the borescope pictures. There is surface rust on the inside of the outside roof panel. And of course, that's just next to impossible to get to by hand. And the last thing I want to do is unpick all of that and pull it down. So that's question number one about getting it sandblasted. Is the sandblasting going to be, or media blasting of whatever kind suits, is that going to be the right way to clean up inside there? Or is the fish oil idea sufficient? But then when you look down here, I don't know where that rust has come from. Of course, the windscreen's still in, so it's kind of hard to inspect, well, impossible to inspect the other side of that unless I get that glass out. As far as the outside of the roof goes, I'm going to take this etch primer off, and clearly there's some body filler underneath it, but I can't see any holes coming through to the inside, and I can't see any dints coming through to the inside. So I think this is just going to be really light cleaning up. Maybe it was a bit of surface rust, who knows, but I want to know. So I'm going to pull all of that off, grind all of that off, and I imagine that roof is going to come back to bare metal anyway. Next is the back wall of the cab, and again the paint, the original paint, is in just such good condition for the most part. I mean, sure, under where the headliner comes down the side here, there's some light surface rust that would need to get cleaned up. By and large, the back panel itself is great, except I've already had to play with some very light surface rust there, just grinding that off. A lot of that rusty colour you're seeing there is probably just dirt, actually. Inside, I don't know what you call that, but inside whatever that is, the dimpled-eyed cute thing, not really any rust in there either. Maybe again just some really light surface rust in places. But I had this fantasy that I'd be able to keep all of that there, just clean it up and have the history of the car still intact. It is so hard to find a Holden of this era that isn't riddled with rust, and it just seems like such a shame not to kind of show off the condition that it's in. I mean, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong. So yeah, I don't know whether there's anything that I can do to retain this interior as much as I can, or whether it's going to cause problems for kind of blending the exterior paint back to the interior, because I do think the exterior of the cab, the doors, the bonnet, the guards, all of that is going to go back to bare metal and get properly treated and painted. So I guess most of my questions really are about how to handle this interior. So yeah, can I keep this maybe up to the seam? Keep it as it is and just clean it up. Maybe just respray over the bits that I've ground back where there was surface rust. Or again, is it more important to get it all sandblasted and properly cleaned up? Now, third on the list is the floor pan itself. This passenger footwell has been replaced with probably a rare spares panel, and that's been partly welded in and partly screwed in, and the screws have been ground down. I don't know if there's any seam sealer between the new panel and the old bit of floor. I don't really know how that was done. But I can't see any new rust appearing around there, so fingers crossed it's probably okay. But the plan with the floor was I was going to just give it another light grind. You can see some flash rusting, flash surface rust coming back. But that's no big deal compared to what I took off it anyway. I wanted to just use KBS, the chassis coating kit, on the floor itself. But then it's kind of where do I define the end of the floor? So, for example, where the upper part of the cab comes down onto the floor pan, this is where the cab mounting bolts come through. How do I, can I just find a way to clean this up really, really well and get the KBS in there? Is it going to be possible to get some kind of tool down into that little corner to get the surface rust out of there? I think I'll be able to wire wheel down this channel down the side of the floor here, but that's technically part of what I'm technically defining as the exterior, because the floor pan kind of seals up there. And then where the floor pan joins up to the firewall, on the interior firewall itself, there certainly is some surface rust coming down from some leaking up around the plenum, but there are no holes. I don't think there's even any pitting on that. So would I just clean that up lightly and respray it with some primer, or would I grind it all back to bare metal, take the KBS all the way up? Don't know. A little bit more surface rust over there. And that's really just from water leaking down over some period of time, but it really isn't bad. I think whatever this is, I'm just calling it a dash frame. That just needs a light clean up too. That's not too hard to do. On the top of this, I think the cowl actually comes all the way through to here from the outside. I'm not really sure if that's two pieces or one piece, but the top of that has the original paint on it, and it is in such nice condition as well. It's just almost perfect. So again, I'd hate to molest that. Fourth on the list, we've got the inside of these back corners of the cab, which are deep, dark cavities. You can see a little bit of it anyway. So I've had a pretty good look inside here, top to bottom, and it really is only very, very light surface rust. What I have done already is vacuumed it out and sprayed a bunch of fish oil in there, thinking that's all I'd need to do to preserve that. And I guess I'm not too worried about in there, because I really think the fish oil is enough to kind of hold that level of surface rust at bay. But if I end up deciding to get the whole cab blasted, then obviously that's going to get blasted as well. And fifth on the list is the cowl and the plenum, which is where probably most of the rust is in these this model of car. This isn't bad. I mean, really, it's had a little bit of work done to it before, and some of that is, can you see the little bits of bubbling just starting to pop up in places? Well, I did notice that here and here more than anywhere else, so took a grinder to it and found two little holes. I don't know what I'll find when I finish grinding all of this off, but I'm going to, because I think any sign of little bubbles coming through is a sign of more rust underneath. This was probably the trigger for me really rethinking the idea of getting this cab sandblasted. I don't know what condition the cowl is underneath the windscreen. Clearly, whoever had this before me or before them did a little bit of work to prepare for a new windscreen. That's obviously not the original one. And yeah, look, even here, it looks like it might be bubbling up a little bit too. Whether or not I get the cab completely sandblasted, it's almost just certainty that I'm going to take that glass out, because I just don't like the unknown of what's sitting underneath this primer and underneath the glass as well. There's only a tiny bit of maybe bubbling that I'm seeing there, but it's enough to sort of put the worry in my head about it. Just grinding off samples of this along the cowl. Most of it's just surface rust, but there is some pitting in different sections here, and I think those pits are quite deep, and I'd want to cut them out and just put some new metal in, I think. So far, all that I've found that's gone through is what I showed you before with these holes. But when I'm feeling with my bare fingers underneath, I can't really feel any other holes through there, through the whole length of it. I think it's just going to be sections with deep pitting like that I'll want to replace. Do you know, I also don't want to take these cowl tags off There just seems something like not authentic about drilling out the rivets and putting them back on again. I just really want to, well, I'd really like to keep them as they are. That's probably not a practical wish though. The next part of the cowl that is a little bit concerning is under here. I'm gonna take a wire wheel to that just to see how bad it is. Still a bit of bog there, I think. But yeah, somebody had just stuck a whole handful of bog up in there and just squished it in. I don't know what they were trying to achieve. But yeah, I want to clean that up and just see if I can get shiny bare metal everywhere. That's going to be less of a worry in my mind. Not too worried about these door hinge mounting areas. Again, that's just a bit of surface rust and that'll clean off quite well. I mean, look at that, that's just shiny and lovely. Almost better. I just switched to a larger wire wheel, it just fits in there a bit better. And I've worked on that for maybe a minute. And I reckon that's cleaned up pretty well. Like, I'm not so worried about it now. Even where the join is here, it looks quite clean. There is a little bit of, would you call it pitting? It probably almost is. Just in this little bend here, which is hard to get that sized wire wheel into. But it's still cleaned up pretty well. I'm not as worried about that now that I've taken the bog out and just gotten back to some shiny metal. The plenum itself is in really good condition. It's pretty dirty in there, I haven't fully cleaned it out yet, but any rust that I can see is really just a really light bit of surface rust. That's almost the original coating actually. So again, not bad, just surface rust. My original thought was I could get my little hands in there with some sandpaper and clean all of that off, and then very awkwardly try to treat it and coat it with something. Well, we know I can get my hand in there. That looked better, didn't it? A little bit. We'll go into the cab and look up inside the air ducts. There is one part in here, in the plenum, that I'm just a bit unsure about. And that bit I'm unsure about, I'm not sure if I can get it on camera, but it's up in the corner, the very, very tight little corner where the cowl and the plenum kind of meet. And I can feel some dust and leaves and stuff up in there. So really it's spaces like that are really tight, and also joins, like where the cowl joins onto the plenum along there. You know, if there's rust in those joins, sandpaper's not going to get it out, and fish oil's probably not going to protect it. It kind of needs to get pulled apart and properly dealt with. At least that's what's going on in my head. You probably can't see well, but you are up in the corner of the plenum, which I'm going to blow out with the compressor. You probably can't hear me well because the generator's running outside. Did I mention that I am building this car in a shed that doesn't have power? Whoa! So I did see a couple of rust flakes blow out, and I can feel with my fingers right up in the corner a little bit of crunchiness, which I don't like. I'll get the borescope up in there again to see if I can get a better look at what's in there. Before, when I did the borescope, all I could really see was a chunk of leaves and you know, dirt. But given that I've blown that out now and there's flakes of, that's not rust, flakes of rust coming out, not a great sign, but it is what it is. What's that? Did I not get all the crud out? I don't think I got all the crud out. Maybe we can headbutt that. No. All right, so I don't reckon that looks scary, but I don't know. Could it become scary if it got drenched with fish oil? Could it still become scary? These are my questions. Oh, and while I'm sitting here, I've forgotten about another part that's been on my mind, and that's these little cavities inside, just kind of to the outside of the footwells. There's those two there on that side, and they're over there on that side. Now, they don't really seem rusty. A lot of this is old seam sealer, I think, that was just sort of packed in there, and that dusty stuff you're seeing is part of what flew off the floor when I was grinding it. But as far as underneath all of that seam sealer, I've really got no idea how much rust there might be down there. I'm not expecting there'd be much given the condition of the rest of the cab. I gave this channel the tagline that life isn't around the corner, it is the corner. Corners are harder than straight lines. We don't always know what's around the corner. Corners need our attention and they need our flow, and I think when we approach them with the right attitude, corners are the most fun part of whatever we're doing. So I think I'm at a corner with this cab decision, and rather than feel anxious or frustrated by it, I want to be able to just flow with it. And that's really why I wanted to put this video together, because I think just talking out loud about what I'm noticing about the cab, what my intentions were, what new questions have come up for me, I think that helps just give me a little bit more clarity and also moves me forward in a sense, because now I know what my questions are, I know what I need to reflect on, and putting it out there into the world via this channel, people like you who have probably got similar experiences can share some of your wisdom with me, I'm hoping. And that'll help me move forward as well. I'll have more information to make those decisions with. Don't get me wrong, I do not want to shortcut this cab. I do not want to rush to get the tonner back on the road. I want to do the right thing by it, but what I'm trying to find is that balance between doing the right thing that doesn't create more rework in the future versus not molesting it, keeping it as original as I can, where the original condition is absolutely good enough to preserve. So I'll keep pondering the questions that I have now articulated through this video, and hopefully I can look forward to hearing some of your thoughts about it as well. And then by the time we come back together to talk about this cab, I'll have a plan of action and I'll know what I'm going to do with it. Thank you for watching. Thank you everyone who has been contributing already comments and experiences and giving me updates about what you're doing with your project as well. It's really motivating and really was the whole purpose for having this channel in the first place. So thank you, all of you. You know who you are. Thanks very much. See you next time.